I want to start this video off by saying that, if it wasn't already really obvious, I love Batman the Animated Series. I was at just about the right age when this show came out, and it burrowed its way into my brain and has lived there ever since. I generally try to be pretty positive, and it's easy to be positive when you're talking about such a high quality show. Having said that, there are some episodes that are particularly poor, especially compared to the dizzying heights of episodes like Two-Face Part 1, Almost Got Him, and Heart of Ice. So that's going to be the topic of today's video, my picks for 7 of the worst episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Quick disclaimer, I'm not making this video to slag off any specific creators or be critical of their work. Many of these episodes were among the earliest episodes to be made, before the creative team was unified under producer Alan Burnett, and as such the tone just doesn't quite fit with the rest of the series. So with that said, let's go straight into number 7. The Lion and the Unicorn. Speaking as an Englishman, this episode is bloody poor. It's filled with stereotypical scenes of smoggy London, painful Cockney accents, and, oh god, don't even get me started on the whole ending where the Batwing flies from Scotland to London in a few minutes. Then we have the antagonist of this episode, Red Claw, a generic Eastern European terrorist with no clear motivations other than to extort money and potentially cause chaos.
You have 1 hour. Otherwise I'll be forced to plant this warhead in the middle of Trafalgar Square. And if I do that, well, God save the Queen.
She is painfully generic. The production values on this episode are generally alright, as many of these later episodes were, but I just found it to be a bit uninspiring. If you're not English, then much of this episode probably won't irritate you. And I know they were going for an 80s James Bond vibe, but I find it particularly tiresome.
Where'd they go? We're chasing a pair of poxy ghosts. No! Stone the crows!
Number 6. Cat Scratch Fever. Let's not beat about the bush. The main thing I dislike about this episode is the animation by ACOM. Their character models are really very basic, with limited motion, and when the characters do move, they're slow and plodding. This episode involves Catwoman's beloved cat Isis being kidnapped by Roland Daggett's henchmen and infected with a man-made virus that will pass from animals to humans. Daggett will then swoop in to save the day by selling a cure, making himself huge profits. It's not a bad premise, highlighting the evils of extreme capitalism and animal cruelty, but overall, this episode stinks. In particular, Daggett's bumbling henchpeople Jesse and Paunch. I hate them so much. Daggett literally hires the worst people in Gotham. And I don't mean the most villainous or mean-spirited, but literally the most incompetent people. If he just vetted his employees a bit better, or had a competent people manager for them, putting them on performance improvement plans, then he might actually succeed in some of his schemes. I will say that I did find Jesse's sanitised swearing kind of amusing.
So kiss off!
I need to start using these terms in my everyday insults.
Attaboy, Fido. Rip him to bits.
Number 5. The Forgotten. Now this one is another morality tale, this time looking at poverty, homelessness and the evils of slavery. Homeless people are disappearing at an alarming rate, which catches the attention of Batman. While undercover, posing as a homeless person, Batman is knocked out and taken away to a slave camp where he suffers from amnesia.
So, what's your name, pal?
I don't know.
Amnesia is a really tired plot device, and it really drags this episode down. The animation is also pretty poor, and the big bad, Boss Biggest, isn't much of a threat. Once Batman regains his memory, he takes the criminals down pretty easily. Now that's not to say this episode is without its merits. Bruce's dream sequence in which he's dragged to his doom by a mirror image of himself that turns into the Joker is decent. And Shirley Walker's bluesy score is really catchy. But overall this episode is another stinker. Number 4. The Last Laugh. Speaking of stinkers, let's talk about The Last Laugh. This is an early Joker episode before they really found their footing with the character. The Joker uses a submarine to cloud Gotham in a gas that will drive the citizens temporarily insane. Prolonged exposure will make them permanently insane. And this was all done to allow the Joker to loot some jewellery stores. I mean, first of all, if the Joker has a submarine and all the chemicals needed to make this toxic gas, why does he need to rob jewellery stores? I don't object to the Joker having these resources, but he's using them in such a pedestrian way. This is really reminiscent of the goofy 1950s comic books when the censors forced comic creators to write child-friendly science fiction stories instead of gritty crime comics. And then there's Captain Clown, the Joker's Terminator-like robot assistant. Just why? Captain Clown is a fun idea, but he's completely wasted in this poor episode. Don't even get me started on the finale either, where the Joker trips and has to be saved by Batman. This is almost a repeat of the ending of Christmas with the Joker, and that was a lame ending the first time it happened. Although once again I will say Shirley Walker's music is pretty good. Number 3. Prophecy of Doom. Again, another morality tale, this time looking at the dangers of cults and con men. This is another forgettable episode animated by ACOM. Gotham's elite fall for the schemes of fraudulent psychic Nostromo, who predicts awful events that may happen to his wealthy followers. Awful events that he and his partner then make happen. This is such a nothing episode, there really isn't anything to call out as being particularly good. I mean, the music's fine, but it's pretty forgettable.
I predict you and I are about to become as rich as pigs.
Episode director Frank Parr was very critical of how the final sequence of this episode was animated by ACOM, stating, "That broke my heart. I designed those planets using a circle template. How hard is it to animate circles? It was done by hand, and if we had done it now, it would have been done on computer and it would have looked spectacular." Number 2. The Underdwellers. You may have noticed a running theme with my least favourite episodes, in that they all focus on social issues. Now, I'm not opposed to discussing these issues. I actually think it's very important to bring them up in the media we consume. It's just in these episodes, the message is very laboured and obvious. We don't need a lecture on how bad child slavery is. Of course it's terrible. And we probably don't need Batman to tell us that children shouldn't be playing with blunderbusses.
Children and guns do not mix. Ever.
This episode has Batman investigating a gang of orphan children thieves that operate out of Gotham's sewers. They live in the darkness and aren't allowed to speak, or else to face the wrath of their master, the Sewer King. He's a Fagin-like ruler of the sewers with an army of children and pet alligators, or crocodiles. I'm not actually entirely certain of the difference. On paper, that sounds pretty rubbish, but I do actually quite like the Sewer King and how over the top he is, although that is mostly down to the performance of voice actor Michael Pataki.
All of you up to the streets!
Bring back pretties. Lots and lots of pretties for your king.
Now!
I just want to take a moment to share a glimpse at the storyboards for this episode. Whoever wrote these notes, presumably the director Frank Parr, is really quite animated in his criticism, likening the Sewer King to Elvis, expressing frustration with some of the scenes, and stating that some shots were as subtle as someone shitting on your face. Yikes! Number 1. I've got Batman in my basement. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to be too negative in this video, but I can't help it. I really hate this episode. It probably would have been a decent episode of the Super Friends, but it is clearly the absolute worst episode of Batman the Animated Series. It's literally the antithesis of everything the creative team were trying to achieve with their show.
Batman's in trouble. Come on.
Batman is assisted by a team of junior detectives, as he is gassed by the Penguin and knocked unconscious. These children then proceed to outwit the Penguin and his henchmen until Batman is able to recover. While there is some amusement to be found in the Home Alone style antics towards the end of the episode, I really hate this one. I think the biggest issue I have is the fact that the best episodes of BTAS don't talk down to children. But this episode seems like it was made exclusively for little children. It's made even more jarring when you think that the next episode in production order was the seminal Heart of Ice. Imagine going from watching I've Got Batman in My Basement to then watching Heart of Ice. It's like night and day. By comparison, this episode is the drizzling shits. Even the creative team disliked this episode, with Bruce Timm saying, "The script came in and it was terrible. Normally I tell the director to do what he can to make it interesting, and nobody could figure out a way. The storyboard artists didn't care, and it shows."
Befouled by a couple of fledglings.
Okay, that's my list. Are any of these episodes your favourite episodes, or do you agree with me that they're all pretty bad? Share your thoughts in the comments below. You know how YouTube works.